No, I have not forgotten about this series. Let's talk about War of the Gargantuas. The War of the Gargantuas from Toho Films, 1966. The other kaiju movie they released that year. This movie is directed by the legend himself, Ishiro Honda. Eiji Tsuburaya is once again back with special effects. The music for this film is Akira Ifukube once more. So you got the Trinity that worked on the original Gojira and many of the sequels, this time doing War of the Gargantuas. Now, this movie, it's interesting that some sources say it's like a quasi sequel to Frankenstein versus Baragon. No, it's a legitimate sequel to Frankenstein versus Baragon because you see, the War of the Gargantuas is just the English name of the movie. The actual original Japanese name of this movie is Frankenstein's Monsters, Sanda and Gaira. And it's literally picking up after events from that Baragon movie. This movie's interesting because going into it, this is one I had not ever seen before. Didn't see it as a kid, saw it for the first time, a little while ago. And I was kind of dreading it because it doesn't have Godzilla. He's not there. It doesn't have any of the recognizable monsters from before. And I was like, I don't know, this might not go so well. I was kind of like just trying to get through it. The movie's only, it's under 90 minutes. But I actually wound up kind of liking a lot of this movie. It's not perfect. It's definitely nowhere near on the level of Mothra versus Godzilla or King Kong versus Godzilla, the originals. Nowhere near on those levels to me, but the story they told was interesting, and I like that when you have sequels to previous movies, I like when there's consequences. I like that when you have this film franchise, a lot of times in these long-running franchises, they don't follow up on the previous movie, or they follow up in a sloppy way, either by forgetting everything that happened, or all of a sudden if there's a building destroyed in one movie, it'll be fine the next one. This movie, I think, felt like a true sequel. Again, I don't really understand why. I don't understand why it was referred to as a quasi sequel. Maybe because they changed the title for it. I don't know, but it is a follow-up to Frankenstein versus Baragon, so of course I recommend watching that one first. One of the things they do in this movie that I thought was really clever is the first sort of act of the film, they try to establish Frankenstein as being a villain all of a sudden. It's very similar to what they did in the first Mechagodzilla film, but it turns out that it's not. It is not the original Frankenstein. Because later, a second Frankenstein monster looking thing, and it's Frankenstein's monster, I know that. It's not Dr. Frankenstein, I understand that, but later a second one appears, and these two are basically revealed to be basically pieces of the original Frankenstein. And what happened was these sort of deep sea fish ate some of the tissue that was left over from the original Frankenstein. It evolved. So it's a kind of a weird origin story that kind of sounds a little bit like Shin Gojira, with the whole deep sea animals eating the nuclear waste. It makes sense. It's that pseudoscience that I think makes sense for the movie. At no point did I think it was too goofy, or did I think it was like, there's other plots of these movies that just really go off the deep end. There's other plots that you really have to put your science fiction hat on to buy it. This one doesn't seem that crazy, especially since we're dealing with these monsters that are oftentimes loaded with radiation. So it really doesn't, it's not really an issue for me. It's not really an issue. So Russ Tamblyn, who is not Japanese, plays Dr. Paul Stewart, who is kind of the secondary main character alongside Dr. Akemi Togawa, played by Kumi Mizuno. And they sort of capture the film. This movie, don't expect any kind of like real love story. Don't expect any kind of like that much of a humanistic story here. I mean, it's there, but it's not like as interesting as some of the other ones. It's basically a bunch of scientists trying to figure out what to do about all this. That's really the main thrust of the plot, is more like a disaster film. The other movie I talked about, the previous one, In fact, a few of the previous ones don't really follow the same formula like as this one does. You know, if you remember, like some of them have like humans on an island trying to find something, or a lot of stuff borrowed from King Kong. This is just like, okay, we have a problem. Here's a bunch of scientists. Let's figure it out. It's literally like something we've seen over and over again, especially in the 80s and 90s, the Heisei era Godzilla movies, where a lot of the leads are just people working for the government or something like that. Not all of them, but a lot of them are. I actually was enjoying the fight in this movie. I like that it's two big Frankenstein's monster clones. I like that. I like, that it's completely out of control. I like that they have to figure out how to stop really the consequences of the battle. And I kind of wanted the fight to go on longer. I kind of thought it was built up well, and I wasn't really bored. I think once you get past certain scenes here and there, and you have to understand, because I watch films from the 70s and 60s, and this is from the 60s, I'm not one of those kids that was born in this TikTok era where I can't sit through a damn movie. There are some movies that just take forever to get to the point, and they are boring, no question about it. But I think I have a little bit more patience than the average fan. Like, if it's somebody who's only seen Legendary Pictures movies, or maybe only seen -1, like, this movie's way slower, but it's still interesting. And it really, I hate to say it because I already went over a lot of the plot, but I like how the movie kind of has a couple of subversions that are pretty cool. I like the ending. I like the sort of not open-ended, because it's like a mix. It kind of depends on what you believe, but it's sort of that whole like pick your own outcome type of ending here. But I do believe this is the final movie in the Frankenstein like series. I feel like this, I don't think there's another one that follows Frankenstein versus Baragon. I think I have to go check, but I think after this one, they moved on to other movies. And don't forget, man, Quentin Tarantino is a huge fan of this movie. If you ever seen Kill Bill Volume 2, there's a lot of inspiration from this movie. Tarantino loves these old cheesy movies, and it's always great. Attack on Titan's creator also really appreciates War of the Gargantuas. And in fact, even Brad Pitt said that this movie got him into acting. That is pretty high praise. That is pretty high praise. That this movie has a weird kind of cult following where you would think that this film would get swept under the rug because it's not Godzilla, but yet people still they still remember this one. This one has like a weird kind of strong memory with a lot of famous people that you wouldn't think would ever waste their time with it. Also, one of the things that I found interesting about this one is that Russ Tamblyn, who played, I mentioned he plays the main character, he basically did all of his lines in English and apparently was dubbed over in the Japanese release. But then they lost the Japanese recording, so he had to do it all over again and redub his lines all over again. And he had to improvise too because he didn't have the original script and he can't remember the lines. So this movie dubbed is a mess. It's just, that's what you're gonna get. Like these old movies, man, they are not made as polished as they are nowadays. So yeah, so the Toho series of movies reviews continues here on the channel. I'm dropping them little by little as I get to them. I got a lot of stuff going on right now, but expect more in the future. I think my next one will either be for Son of Godzilla or that King Kong movie. I think it's called King Kong Escapes, whichever one I get to see first. Anyways, see you guys then. Take care. Have a good one.